Hello, everyone. Welcome to season 3, episode 9 of the Dateable AF Podcast. Today, we are talking about owning it versus explaining it, what accountability looks like in real life. And I am really wishing that I had recorded our pre-show conversation for you and our audience because we have covered some good topics, but unfortunately, they are not fit for public consumption. So we're just going to segue right on into this topic.
Wait. I just need to know if anybody else has seen the vending machine with the tiny donkeys and the tiny.
Rachel just informed me that this was AI generated, but I did see on my Instagram, it was a vending machine where you could buy a tiny donkey, like a live tiny donkey. And I was already planning my retirement on my farm full of tiny donkeys.
I've been harshing Sarah's farm dream.
She's harshing my vibe so hard. All right. Well, on to our topic. Accountability is something that shows up in my therapy practice a lot. People, for some reason, have a very, very hard time taking accountability for things. People end up just in conversations that go nowhere. You try to talk about something that hurt you. The other person explains their intention, their stress, their perspective, why something happened. By the end of the conversation, you might understand that person better, but you don't actually feel better because that's the difference between explanation and accountability. Accountability is more than just explaining why something happened. And so today we're going to talk about why those two things get confused and what real accountability looks like in relationships.
I'm venture to guess that most of our audience probably wouldn't be able to tell you the difference between a true accountability, because I think it's a very hard thing to do. And I think most of us are pretty bad at it.
I think you're right. When somebody explains themselves, it can sound thoughtful. It can sound like they're being reflective. It can even sound like growth sometimes. To be fair, explanations are not necessarily a bad thing. Context matters, like why you did something or why you said something. That matters sometimes, but explanation typically focuses on the person who caused the impact, and accountability focuses on the experience of the person who was affected. That shift is where repair actually begins. So why don't we talk about what real accountability includes?
Well, real accountability usually is, it has several elements. So naming what happened without minimizing it.
Yes.
Recognizing the impact without arguing with it. And I think that's probably a really difficult thing to do whenever you've done something, somebody's told you that it's hurt their feelings. And even if you say, I'm sorry, and you may truly feel you're sorry, the desire to need to follow that up with an explanation about why you didn't mean to do it it's a compulsion. I mean, most people really do it.
Yes. I only did this because you did that. That's not accountability. I really like what you said about naming what happened without minimizing it. When I didn't kiss you goodbye, it hurt your feelings. Instead of saying, when I didn't kiss you goodbye, it was because I was in a hurry and you were in the other room and I was trying to rush out the door. It's like, okay, that doesn't make the person feel better. So recognizing how that impacted them and not trying to argue about it. Taking ownership of your role in the situation. And I think also showing willingness to adjust your behavior going forward.
I had a conversation with my mother the other day, sort of related to this topic. And we had a moment where we were doing this dance because she is not wanting me to go to Mexico City. And all the reasons why I should be terrified. And so oftentimes I just say, okay, well, I'm sorry, that you're, I'm sorry I'm worrying you. And I'm going to be okay. And I'll check in. But this time I did not do that. I did the argument of, I said, Mom, I'm in schools where I am much more likely to be killed by a very mentally ill white boy that Uzis a bunch of elementary kids than I am in Mexico City. And that's just factual,
Mhm. Yep.
And as soon as I did it, and my mom got really quiet and she said, Rachel, her response was,
I can't wait to hear this.
well, Rachel, what do your friends feel like whenever you're Miss Know-It-All?
Oh, she burned you.
I know. So then off we go. So, well, actually, I just said, hey, at that point, then I said, hey, I'm sorry I said anything. I don't have anything else to say. And then I didn't say another thing.
And then you took your toys and you went home.
You know what? I just stayed silent. And she came back in and said, I actually point out those things to you more than you do to me. I know that I'm more likely to try to force you into something that makes me comfortable.
Well, that was good self-awareness on her part.
And then you know what I said?
What did you say?
Yes, you do.
Oh.
So, Dr. Kyle,
I feel that you might need to listen to some earlier episodes of our podcast. If someone's apologizing to you, you thank them for the apology.
I was mad by then. I made a D.
That's a great example, though, of her coming back and being accountable for her behavior and recognizing how she impacted you and recognizing that she does that to you more than you do it to her. So that she did a good job. ML gets an A+.
And Rachel got a D, maybe a C.
Well, I wasn't there, but from your recounting of it, I would maybe give you a C-.
Okay, thank you. And so it goes. But in that conversation, I realized there were several moments in there where I certainly could have done it differently than I did.
Yeah, that's good awareness. Accountability is really less about trying to prove that you're a good person, and it's more about showing the other person that you understand the harm that you caused. So that's what your mom did well in this situation. She wasn't trying to say, I'm right, or this is why I said that. She's trying to say, I understand that I said this and it was harmful to you. And that was really, she did a really good job. The goal in this isn't to blame yourself for something. It's to repair a relationship that you might have damaged.
In doing a bit of research on this topic, I ran into some really fun stuff. Honestly, one of the things, so just to really bring home the importance of this topic and also the difficulty in this topic, is that the research identifies through some of the studies about this, that accountability as a crucial, though under-researched, counter to defensiveness. So there's been a lot more research done on defensiveness versus accountability, and they run really close together, right? Your reaction to defending yourself is defensiveness, and then trying to be accountable. But it's very under-researched. And the Gottman Institute's talked about that there's just not, they've probably done more research on it than anyone else. But it is also, what they do know is it's a known predictor of divorce.
Defensiveness or not taking accountability?
Not taking accountability.
I believe that. Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. Gottman, we've talked about this on the podcast before, has what he calls the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, things that really can tear down a relationship. And one of those 4 things is defensiveness. And can we talk a little bit about how defensiveness might look different than accountability?
Yeah.
Sometimes somebody's saying something like, oh, I didn't mean it that way, or I was stressed out, or, that's not who I am. Those are defensive statements. Instead of saying, wow, when I said that, it really hurt your feelings. And I'm sorry. That, again, going back to something we've talked about before, you're apologizing for the impact that you had on someone else. You're acknowledging that you impacted someone negatively, and you're taking accountability for that. It doesn't mean that you were wrong. It just means you're acknowledging how you impacted someone.
It's very difficult to me and I'm sure for a lot of our audience, to understand there's conversation that has to be likely needs to be had if this is sort of a repeat performance of something that causes the dynamic. And so when is it that you actually have the conversation? Because I think what we're saying is, in the moment, you defending yourself, which you think is the conversation, is not the right time.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, is the timing of it. In the moment, you're trying to explain yourself because you didn't mean to hurt someone's feelings. And so the explanation gets carried away and you lose sight of the original problem, which was that you negatively impacted someone.
Yeah, that's very tricky.
It's tricky. It's tricky. Over time, when, like you said, when explanation replaces accountability, somebody's not taking accountability for the way they impacted you, it erodes the trust in the relationship. So you start to get protective and you start to get wary, not just because someone made a mistake, but because the repair never fully lands. They're not actually making a repair if all they're doing is explaining something. So you start to feel unheard, and those conversations start to feel pointless. And I think you just shut down.
That's a point that came up in the research a lot, was about the fact that you're not making an appropriate repair. And so in the moment, it may seem like it was not a big deal, as sort of you laid this out in the beginning of this episode, because it may not be a big blow up. The person may walk away accepting your apology, but they don't feel like that that reparations were made for the situation. And to this point about this extensive nature of the damage that this can do, eroding you over time. Have you heard of the Gottman Love Lab? Did you read anything about that during your studies?
I don't. Oh, where they brought people into like a living situation? Yes.
Yeah. They brought newlyweds into a living situation who obviously realized they were human subjects. And so they were being studied, but they were being studied around, they were being observed, and also had heart rate monitors on and several different measurements of what was going on with them. But they were observing them having their daily lives, which included them having arguments and dealing with this very thing that we're talking about, and that their vitals were pretty wacky whenever around this very scenario of just this unresolved conflict, so to speak, but really about not being heard. And then the other piece that kind of went with that was just that there was some data, or strong data around structured, they call them structured accountability practices. So couples that actually have structured accountability practices, that's associated with 47% higher relationship satisfaction and 58% fewer conflicts.
So a structured accountability practice would be sort of a formula that you follow when...
Yes, the impression I had with that was that it was you had some, very much like you give your clients sort of some steps, as like, when this happens, try this, then this, then this, and don't go to this, try to really, and so yeah, I think that's what they were referring to, was just some good agreements about how you're going to deal with those things when it comes up that were around both people being heard and not, and really having that accountability in place.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's important to have some structure and know how to, how to move forward if you get stuck like that. Well, let's talk about what you could say instead. So if your tendency is to say something like, I didn't mean it like that, or I was stressed out, or, that's not who I am. What could you say instead that actually is accountability?
I see how that affected you.
Yeah, that's so simple and so straightforward. I see how that affected you. And if you think about those words, you're not saying I was wrong, I messed up. You're not saying any of those things, which is where people get stuck. Well, it's true. I had a couple in my office this week that it was a husband and wife, and the wife's a very laid back person and the husband is a very structured person. And the wife was doing something that was kind of benign. And the husband walked in and was like, what are you doing? Why are you doing it that way? And she just kind of shut down. And they both had their own explanation. She's like, this didn't seem like a big deal to me. So she's explaining why she was doing the thing. And he said, anyone would know that that's not the way it's supposed to be done. So he's explaining why he reacted the way he did. And neither of them paused to say, man, I see how that affected you. And if they had just said that, the whole thing would have been over. But instead, this turned into an argument that lasted for like 48 hours.
Was it one of those where they went to bed mad and then they didn't talk to each other? And
they did. They went to bed mad. They were mad the whole next day. Then they went to dinner and they were still mad. And it was a whole thing. And if one or both of them had said, oh, like I see how that affected you, or I can understand why that hurt. I can understand why that upset you. That's all it takes usually to change the dynamic. And even better if you can genuinely say, I want to do this differently next time. If that's not genuine, then don't say that. But if one or both of them had been able to say, yeah, I'd like to do that different if it happens again.
This makes me think about that argument where you can't, you're mad in the moment. You don't address the root of what really hurt you. Mm-hmm. Is the root of what really hurt was because they didn't stop one or the other and say, oh, I see how that affected you. Mm-hmm. So they spent 48 hours mad at one another. Mm-hmm. We've all done this. When you get asked about why you're mad, like what's going on, you can't even tell why. Mm-hmm. Because when you start to try to explain what's not really the truth, uh-huh. It doesn't make any sense and you sound stupid.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep. And I think that takes some self-awareness too, to realize that this, in the big scheme of things, this isn't going to alter our lives in any dramatic way. So why am I getting so upset? Why am I staying in a fight for 48 hours about something? This technique that we're talking about, it doesn't require perfection. You don't have to do these things perfectly, but you have to be present and you have to be in tune with what the experience is like for the other person.
You have to buy in. You really do have to buy into you're not trying to win something.
Oh man, I wish that's probably one of our takeaways from every podcast. It's a team sport, people. If your teammate loses, guess what? You're on the same team as them and you lose too. Like, you got to help your teammate win.
You need to read Crucial Conversations.
Yeah, exactly.
But I mean, it is actually simple. Rather simple thing to think about is backing away, and when these things come up, and thinking, am I in a zero-sum game here? Am I is this a situation where I'm trying to come out as a win? There's going to be a winner and a loser here.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And you can do that in your head, because I reflect back on that conversation with my mother.
Mm-hmm.
And if I had just stopped myself, I would have known that there was going to be a winner and a loser, and I was the loser.
Yeah. Yeah, it's true. It's true. And the truth is, there isn't really a winner, because neither of you felt great about that conversation. And if you had said something, well, let me ask you, what could you have said differently when she said, I can't believe you're going to Mexico City, it's dangerous? What could you have said?
The same thing that I actually have said a million times, which is, I am sorry that it worries you. And I really hope that, I'll stay in touch with you, and I will not, as I always say to her, I won't take any unnecessary risks. I won't go anywhere by myself. I won't venture out by myself. I will make sure that I only go to safe places.
Yeah. Like, thank you for caring about me.
That's real simple.
Yeah. It means so much that you care about my safety. Yeah. That would have probably, I don't know that would have soothed her, but I don't know that anything you could say would soothe her. So I think you're right. Like, I can see that it worries you. I see the impact of my trip on you. Mm-hmm.
Well, and she did end up saying, hey, I'm your mother. I love you. And I'm going to worry about you no matter how long you live, or no matter what. That's that's what I'm going to do. And I said, and I love that you care that much about me. So
yeah. Yeah, of course. So that's kind of a simple ending where everybody gets to win. I think owning the impact, like owning the way that you impacted the other person, it shifts the conversation from defense to connection. It allows space for you two to really connect with each other. And that's when the repair becomes possible.
Yeah. That's, again, I know this in my head, as I know a number of our audience. To intellectualize it is one thing, but to actually own it and own the skill to do it is it's a different story when you're in that place.
Yeah. Yep. The pause seems like the most important thing. I'm just thinking about myself personally, because I do want to be quick to explain why I didn't mean to hurt you, or there was a reason why I did this thing that was hurtful. And that's not helpful. You don't need to explain it first. You need to acknowledge the impact first. And then later you could say, hey, can I tell you what was happening for me when I said that? Or can I tell you why I acted that way? And then maybe the other person can hear it because you've acknowledged the impact.
This one also connects back to the shame factor in our shame episode, because I do think that oftentimes our response is about us feeling ashamed that we've done something wrong. And so people hate to hold that feeling. Like, oh my God,
Yeah.
And so, being clear that it's, this isn't about shame. This is
quite the opposite.
Yeah.
It could also be the flip side of that, which is, I don't want to feel shame, so I'm going to prove to you why I didn't do anything wrong. Like, I need to clear my name here, rather than just acknowledging, like, dang, I hurt your feelings. Sorry.
Well, yeah. I mean, and sometimes you just get some satisfaction if somebody's blaming you for something, and then you like that you hid their keys from them.
Exactly.
And then you say, and when you find them in their pants pocket, I mean, it's hard to help from just going,
it's hard.
Hey,
like, see, I told you.
Exactly.
Yep. That reminds me of that story that, I don't know if this is true or if it's one of those urban legends, but that a guy sat down at the airport and he had bought himself a snack, and he put the snack down on the bench or the seat beside him. And he looks over in a few minutes, and this woman next to him was eating his snack. And he sat there and he was like incensed. He was just so upset. He couldn't believe this woman had picked up his snack and just started eating it. It was like a pack of cookies or something. And she looked at him and she offered him one. And he was like, oh, and he was just boiling inside. Well, then when they called for boarding, he got up and he realized that his was still sitting there on the seat beside him, that was her own snack. She had bought the same thing he did. But it's one of those things, like he had built this whole story in his head about how this woman had wronged him and she had stolen his snack. And turns out that wasn't the case at all.
Oh my God. That is a walk of shame right off that airplane.
Yep.
Because Sarah, nobody knows better than you. Snacks are important.
Oh, so important. If you eat my snack, I would have ripped it right out of that woman's hand. Then I would have felt real bad when I realized it wasn't hers. And it wasn't mine.
TSA probably would have been pulling your ass off the airplane.
Exactly.
you and your support goat or whatever.
Exactly. My emotional support donkey.
Tiny donkey out of the vending machine.
I'm glad we brought it back around to the tiny donkey before we wrap things up. If anyone knows about the tiny donkey and if that vending machine is real or if tiny donkeys are even real, I'm going to need to hear from you. Because Rachel burst my bubble into thinking now that they're not. No, I was already making a plan to get one.
It's just a guess, but she does think that she thinks it might be a good emotional support.
Can y'all imagine if I had an emotional support donkey on an airplane? I think that would be the best.
Little vest on.
I know, little vest. I'm going to say he's my medical alert donkey.
Oh God!
Glad you could tie that back in somehow. That was good.
Thank you. I do what I can.
I appreciate that. Well, before we diverge too much into tiny donkeys, why don't we talk about the takeaways we want folks to get from this episode about accountability?
Okay. Well, explaining your intentions doesn't repair impact. I think that's a big one. Is just because you said it festers. Like you think you're doing something good, but that just continues to. It's not repairing anything. It's actually hurting.
Disconnecting. Yes, absolutely. Also, accountability isn't about shame. Like you said, it's about taking responsibility. And we almost always feel better when we take responsibility for our actions.
Yeah. And you don't have to be perfect to be accurate. I mean, seriously, folks, being honest with yourself, if you're a perfectionist, these things typically are harder for you because the mere sense that you've done something wrong makes it really difficult for perfectionists, I think, to be good in this arena.
Yep. So it's not about perfection. You're right. Also, you just have to be willing to face what happened and be willing to move differently in the future. If you can do these 4 things, it's going to make a big difference in your relationship. After listening to this episode, if you want to talk with your partner, if you want to talk with a friend or your mother about this, family member, here are a couple of questions. When something goes wrong between us, do we tend to explain more than we own our own behavior? And if so, what could we do differently that would help us feel truly repaired? So talk about that with your people and let us know how the conversation goes. Please DM us, Instagram. We are at Dateable AF, or you can email us old school info@dateableaf.com. And please follow us on Instagram and connect with us. We love hearing from you. If this conversation made you think of someone in your life, share the podcast with them. And that's how our community keeps growing. As always, we want to thank you for listening to the Dateable AF podcast, where we help you find your happy ending.
And remember, be bold, be kind, and for the love of self-respect, don't text your ex. Stay dateable.
AF.